I want to talk to you about our changing culture and the fascistic side of our culture. First of all, when Donald Trump said, maybe somebody should monitor, or so government should look at all the license of these media companies, everybody screamed, including me, from high heaven, we don't do that. We don't do that. That's bad. But the media cared, and they called him a fascist. Well, if he would have done anything like that, I guess you could say that's fascistic. The problem here is the left does not have a problem with fascism as long as it's them that are in charge. They are getting so bold and so out of step with the American people, it's a little frightening. What do they know that we don't know? Well, I think one of the things that they think about us, they learned from our COVID response, they can get a lot of people to do exactly what they want and unreasonable things. Truly, we are now in the category of unreasonable. What is the fight over Spotify really about? It is about Joe Rogan, and it is about misinformation. But really the fight is about, can somebody even as powerful now as Joe Rogan, somebody who a company is paying $100 million over 5 years to, and somebody who has 10 times the audience of Fox and CNN, 10 times the audience, probably about 8 times the audience of any show on the networks. Can he be allowed to speak? The answer is no. And now the federal government got involved over the weekend with the Surgeon General. And the Surgeon General said, these places like Spotify, they just haven't done enough. Bend the knee. That is fascism. When governments control corporations, what they can and cannot do without owning them, that's fascism. When the government can tell you what you can and cannot say, that's fascism. Unfortunately, we have a we've done a poor job in teaching people what fascism is. So everything is a fascist. It's not. It's not. But there are very clear signs of fascism that if you do these things, you are indeed no judgment. I mean, yes, judgment, because we know what fascism is. But in the old days, no judgment. Yeah, I'm a fascist. Benito Mussolini, they loved it. The left loved him. They still love him. People sometimes even love, who lived under Mussolini because the trains ran on time. He fixed things. And a lot of people are willing to live like that. Well, in America, we have always thought that that was wrong. But that's where we are now. We used to see things as clearly wrong. But now there's a new spin on things. Remember, they didn't come in jackbooted, these jackbooted thugs didn't come in the black uniforms and everybody go, oh my gosh, look at those uniforms. They're so clearly evil. Star Wars, stormtroopers, those were modeled after the stormtroopers of Nazi Germany. That's why it's black and red and all of that stuff. But back in the 1930s, Hugo Boss was the one that designed those uniforms. Hugo Boss. They weren't designed to look scary. They were designed to look sharp. Evil always morphs and tries to trick you. And many of our people, let me give you this. Would you know a fascist if they said, let's go into the library and burn all the books? I mean, that is the easiest definition of fascism, is it not?
I feel like they usually do it outside the library. But that's
Yes.
about the only difference. In
Exactly.
a big pile in front of a government building, typically.
Did you know that 2 years ago, Canada really was operating with a crystal ball, if any of us would have seen, of what's coming our way. 2 years ago in Ontario, over 4,700 children's books were removed from school libraries, more than 30 school libraries. That's bad enough. But then the school board decided to burn them in a, quote, flame purification ceremony. This is what they said. We bury the ashes of racism, discrimination, and stereotypes in the hopes that we will grow up in an inclusive country where all can live in prosperity and security. So on one end, they are literally in Canada burning books in a ceremony. Here in America, we don't have the flame purification, but we have diversity auditors, and it's happening in libraries all over the country. Libraries in America have been auditing their collections for diversity and inclusion, and one of the audits in 2018 from Loyola concluded that its collection was totally deficient in LGBTQ plus topics. That's fine. You want to add things? That's fine. Bard College, liberal arts college in upstate New York, its Office of Inclusive Excellence, that's what it's called, has hired 3 students to comb through 400,000 books in their college library, evaluating each book for its representation of race, ethnicity, gender, and religion. They call this the first step in, quote, the process of decanonizing the stacks. America, you don't have to have a PhD. You don't have to be a deep thinker to realize this is not good. Now, America is fighting back on this culture war. You're fighting back, and it is making a difference. Even though in Virginia, you got to feel beat up by Loudoun County, they're still fighting you. They're still fighting you. Don't give up. It's happening everywhere. Diversity auditing is another dangerous front in the culture war. Maybe it's time that you contact your alma mater if you went to college. Let them know you're taking your donation elsewhere if they're doing any of this stuff. Money doesn't talk. It screams. That's why they're going after Joe Rogan. If you can get a company to walk away from a $100 million investment or screw with their $100 million investment, that screams to everyone else. You better play ball, because we just had them screw up a $100 million investment. What do you think we can do to you? This is really, truly what ESG scores are about. And ESG scores cannot just become about oil and gas, because that's just the E. S is social justice. G is governance. That is our entire life. And in China, Chinese government has its own moral standards. And they are silencing dangerous people. Do you know what that means? Do you know that you're not allowed to leave your house in China without your phone? If you leave your house without your phone, this should tell you everything about your phone. Do you leave your phone open where you're talking as a couple, where you leave it next to your bedstand? Where is that listening device? Where is that? In China, if you leave without your phone, facial recognition on the streets finds you, and the cops stop you and say, go back and get your phone. When you're approaching somebody, have you ever heard the what is it? The kidnapping alert, the Amber Alert.
Amber Alert, yeah.
Ever heard the Amber Alert on your phone? That's what happens to your phone when you approach someone who has a low social score. This is everything the left has dreamt of and so much more from Saul Alinsky. You isolate people. We are headed in that direction. And this is not some futuristic talk. The technology exists today. All it requires is for a people to go into a panic for some reason or another, like we did for COVID. Once you go into that panic, you lose all reason and faith. And as they themselves say, never let a good crisis go to waste.